Hello, my friends. I hope you're all doing well. Today we are learning chapter 6 in Rambam, where we are learning a couple details, various laws in regards to prayer. So the Rambam begins off by telling us that a person in wild time of prayer in the shul, in the synagogue, in the house of prayer, a person should not walk by the synagogue and not walk inside, because it's going to seem as if he's not joining in the prayer, unless there is another synagogue in town or another place of prayer where then it might be understood that he's going to the other house of worship, and that would be okay. Especially if a person is wearing tefillin or a talis, a talit, which would then show how he is on his way to pray and ultimately is not just abandoning the prayers. A person who is praying within the synagogue, within the house of worship, should not, and he's joining in the rest of the congregation, he shouldn't pray too long, much longer than everyone else. In other words, he should be praying together with the rest of the congregation. Unless, if it's after the prayer and now he wants to add on something extra, a person is allowed to add on an extra prayer on their own. But the main step of the prayer they should be doing it together with the rest of the congregation. As well, if a person has a specific reason where they want to add a special prayer, let's say maybe someone is not feeling well, or if they are asking God for a blessing for more prosperity, they have a lack in a certain monetary issue, so then they can add in the blessing where we ask from God for health or for prosperity, etc. They're able to ask and add on a little extra describing what they want to ask specifically from God. But that's only in the middle of the blessings where we ask from God our own needs. But in the beginning of the Amidah and in the end of the Amidah, where we are praising God and giving thanks to God, over there we shouldn't add. So we are able to add our own asks and requests in the middle of the Amidah and after the main part of the Amidah, after the end. So we're able to add on extra over there. Now the Rambam moves on to another law where he says that a person in the morning, before they pray, should not eat, because before we pray to God, we don't want us to get carried away, so we shouldn't sit down for a meal before we start praying, unless someone is not feeling well, and so then that's a different story. But in general, we shouldn't sit down to a full-on breakfast before we pray. Similarly, we shouldn't go and call our friends, find out how they're doing, or go on to a trip before we pray. So rather, first thing in the morning, we should start praying to God, give our thanks to Him, ask Him for everything that we need, and then we start our day. Similarly, also in regards to the afternoon prayer. And the truth is that in regards to the afternoon prayer, it's even more stringent than just the morning prayers. Because in the morning, we're anyways not so busy with other things. So the rabbis didn't feel that people would start getting carried away by doing other things. But in regards to the afternoon prayer, so regularly in the middle of the afternoon, people are very busy with many different things. So therefore, they instituted certain things that we shouldn't do from the time that prayer of the afternoon prayer has arrived. In other words, once the afternoon starts. For instance, once it gets to the afternoon, we shouldn't start a big meal before we do the afternoon service. Similarly, we shouldn't start taking a haircut, because maybe it's going to take a long time, or we shouldn't start a judgment in the courthouse once the time for the afternoon prayer has arrived, etc. So things that might take a long time, we should be careful and not start them. And if he started, well, then finish and then get back to the prayers. So what does it mean if a person has already started? So for instance, if a person is taking a haircut, as we said, so once they have put the barber's cloth over their knees and over their body, so then they should just take the haircut and pray afterwards. Similarly, it says that a person shouldn't take a shower, because back in the day, taking a shower was a whole long ordeal. And so once a person has taken off their underclothes, so that means they're now actually getting to the shower, so take the shower and pray afterwards. Similarly, to start a dinner, once a person has washed their hands, sat down at the table, so that if a person has already started, so then they say finish and then get the prayer. But generally, we should not start doing other things that might prolong and make us miss the time of prayer. And now, in regards to the evening prayer, the Rambam says that the evening prayer, as we said, technically is not obligatory. But on the other hand, a person shouldn't say, once they come home in the evening, and they say, well, I'll eat, I'll go to sleep a little bit, and eventually, in the middle of the night, I'll get to the prayers. Rather, we're worried maybe a person will get carried away and will sleep long, and ultimately will sleep through the night and not have the opportunity of prayer. So therefore, we should pray in the beginning of the evening before we start getting involved in other things. If a person was studying Torah, so we have two important things. On the one hand, we're studying. On the other hand, now it's time to pray. So which one should we do? So once the time of prayer has come, we should stop studying. We should go and pray, and then afterwards come back to study. Unless, now this is not a general rule, but unless this is a person who studies the entire day, literally, that his job is studying, and this is what he does, this is what his full-time occupation is study. Now, the thing is that today, most people are going, even if a person, their full-time occupation is study, they anyways stop to eat and to drink and to sleep and so on. So, go to the bathroom, take a little break, fresh air. So anyways, people are stopping. So today it wouldn't be as applicable, but back in the day you definitely had great rabbis who would literally be sitting and studying the whole day long, and they would just have some really minimal occupation with other bodily needs, but so in such a case, they would not stop for prayer, but rather they would just continue learning the whole time. The Rambam says someone who is involved in the welfare of the community is like one who is involved in Torah study. So the same would apply to there. And a person who is praying should not stop their prayer for any reason, unless it is a life-threatening issue. So even if you have a king, a Jewish king, someone who understands the value of prayer, and you're in the middle of praying and suddenly this Jewish king comes by, you should not stop the prayer because he realizes you're in the middle of talking to God, so therefore you shouldn't stop. But if it's a non-Jewish king who might not understand the value of your prayer and would become upset at this, you're not turning to wish him and greet him, so then you should stop because it is a life-threatening issue, and therefore we should stop and greet them and then continue. Similarly, if there is a snake or a scorpion which could be dangerous, so then a person should stop. But if he knows in general and in a place where he lives that it's not dangerous, so then he shouldn't stop, even though he might be a little bit uncomfortable. And the Rambam completes this chapter and essentially completes the main idea of prayer over here in the laws of prayer. And he says that even though we said that in regards to the reading of the Shema, women are not obligated to read the Shema, but still in regards to prayer, women and so too also children, everyone really is obligated to pray to God, because this is essentially not bound to a certain time on a scriptural level. It's and whenever a person has a need, they have to ask from God. From the rabbis, they've added on that it just should be at specific times of the day, 3 times, morning, afternoon, and evening. But in general, everyone has the commandment to pray to God. And so to also, but unless someone is at a someone who is, for whatever reason, is going to be exempt from reading the Shema. In other words, if we have a man who is exempt from reading the Shema for whatever reason, for instance, if a person is at a funeral where we said that the person wouldn't be obligated to read the Shema if they are at the funeral, so too also in regards to prayer, also the person would be exempt for certain circumstances. So that is the completion of the chapter for Rambam of today. We have learned various details of ideas of things where we are not allowed to do before we pray, so on and so forth. That is the chapter for today. So, guys, stay safe. We are in the middle of a storm over here, and we will see you tomorrow, God willing. We should have electricity, internet, Wi-Fi, etc. See you.